Hey, this is Joy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a Christmas card for Maker Forte. I am using the poinsettia stamp set and chameleon cardstock. And what I am attempting to do is to stamp on the glitter cardstock as well as using alcohol markers. Typically when you have glitter cardstock, you cannot use alcohol markers of any type because it will clog the nib of the marker as well as tear it up. This paper was designed to be able to color on it, whether it's alcohol markers or if you use alcohol ink, as well as any other type of die cutting, anything that you want to do with the paper. So because this is glitter cardstock, I am having to stamp my image 3 different times with the Eclipse black ink. Not of any fault of the ink, but because glitter cardstock has dimension and texture to it, so some of the color will stay on top and the other parts will sink down into the paper. So using my Misty, my ink smooshing tool, I do ink this up, like I said, 3 times. Typically when you stamp on a slick surface, you would use like a StazOn ink. And that's because it dries almost instantly and is permanent. However, because I am using alcohol markers, in this case Olo Markers, I am having to stamp with a dye-based ink like Eclipse black ink. So I use my heated tool to dry this and to get a very good, the best chance I have of not smearing my ink. So I am using my Olo Markers, and I'm using a blue-green and a red combination. So I start out by using the blue-green in a 0.4, and I choose to do about 4 leaves just to include in this video so that you can see it happen, but you don't need to see all of them. Now when I tackle big images that are like floral images, I always choose the foliage first. And I map those out so that I have a very good understanding of what is flowers and what are leaves. If I have an image that's got multiple floral images in it, then I will map out each one of the flowers in a light color so that I don't get confused. In this case, I have leaves and I have flower petals, so it's not a huge deal. I started out, like I said, using the blue-green 0.4. And then I outline it in a blue-green 0.8 marker. I follow the stem and the ribbing of the leaves with that 0.8. And then from there, I then blend that with a 0.7. And then I come back in with a 0.4. And what that does is it gives me variation in my leaves so that I have different tones and I have shadows. With this being on glitter cardstock, the Eclipse black ink, like I said, kind of sinks in so you don't get a vibrant stamping. So we're going to achieve what looks like a no line coloring. So that is why I am outlining everything with my darkest color so that we've got variation. You will find as I color this that I do lose some of that when I bring in the lighter colors. So eventually I do come back in with my darkest colors, both my red and my blues, to get some shadows and delineation. So I am liking the way this looks. It is a little scary. I've never done this technique. This was an experiment that I had and I wanted to bring you along. Now I'm coming in with my RV 0.2, 0.4, 0.6 and an R18. I am using the R18 to outline all of the petals of the flowers and putting in the lines of the petals. And I'm doing that with pretty much the entire first flower. I make the mistake and do not follow my rules of doing 1 petal at a time, and I wish I had. In this instance, I used my 0. I think that's a 0.2, and I color all of the petals. Now I will tell you that with this technique, you need to give time for each of your layers to dry, which I did not do. I then come in with the 0.4 and the 0.6, and I start to get some pretty muddy colors. And I have sped this up by 4 times on this portion of the video because I'm going to slow it down for the second flower. That way you can see the right way to do. So with alcohol marker coloring on this glitter cardstock, you can't get in a lot of the detail. You can't do the flicks. You can't do the fine lines that you typically do when you're on, a smooth cardstock. So keep that in mind, just to do really simple shading and try to keep it more seamless. I tried to do the scary, scary darks with the bright highlights, and I had to work. I mean, you look at it, it's not pretty right now. So now you're seeing by the magic of editing that all the leaves are done, and now I am coming in with the reds on the second flower, and I do the exact same thing where I outline all of the petals with the R1.8. And now I am coming in very, very slow, and one petal at a time I am putting in some of the shadows, and I am attempting to flick some of the colors. That gets lost a little bit, but it's much better than the first flower. So, like I said, the key is to go slow and to do one petal at a time so each petal dries in between the next coat. Like I said, this has multiple layers to it. You've got different textures, so that ink in some places stays wet longer than others. But keep in mind, your nib is safe, your marker is safe, and there's no damage being done to the marker. After this 0.6 was put in, I come in with the 0.4. I'm sorry, right now we're on the 0.6 because I did the 1.8. Now I'm in the 0.6, and you can see that the 0.6 is a much brighter red than that 1.8. So what that tells me is that the 0 family is a less saturated, meaning it has less black or gray added in. I am trying to figure out the Olo marker system just like everybody else, so that's why I am sharing that. I then come in with the 0.4, which is more of a magenta color, and what that's doing is it's bringing brightness into the shadows, and this is going to be the main color. This is the mid-tone color of my marker mix here. So that what that means is that the majority of the flower is going to be this RV 0.4. And again, I am working these very slow. I feel like I'm being repetitive in what I'm saying, but this was a process, and it was one that I would prefer that takes some time, so that if you try to replicate it, you don't blow through it like I did on the first flower and then have to spend a lot of time fixing it, which I didn't leave in the fixes because it was a lot of the same process as I did with the second one, but I had to keep going in with my dark colors and working it. My final step on this is to bring in the RV 0.2 and to color in the rest of the pinks. Now, some of the petals around the stamen get to be very, very small, and that's where I was pointing how much different this flower looked versus the second one. I did lose some of my dark lines, so here I am opting to go in with this R18, and I am drawing in all the leaves, all of the ribbing on the petals, and putting in all of the shadows. So where one petal lays on top of the next, I am making sure to put a really dark shadow in there so that you get differentiation of the flower. And again, this takes some time. I'm sorry that my head gets in the way, but it is really hard to see the ink lines, meaning the black ink lines from the original stamping once I start putting this color on, because of all the different lights, like the light from the glitter bouncing. It's really, really hard to see it. So I am wearing reading glasses in order to see this stuff. Again, this is totally worth it to me, but it takes some time and you just have to keep working at it. Now I'm coming back in with that 0.4, which is the mid-tone color, and I'm just adding that in so that we get some variation. Like I said, this is our main color of our flower, so the 0.4 is the color that you're seeing the most, but that our 1.8 is what's giving you the saturation and the different colors in there. So once this is finished up, I am going to probably give you a heart attack with what I'm going to do next. I'm just going to tell you that because I was holding my breath. I think somewhere in the video I actually had my fingers crossed so that you can see that I wasn't convinced that it was going to work either. But I am a fan of black lines, so you're going to just die when you see what I do. So I do like a high contrasting background, or I like it to pop. So I used my V2.8 and I colored in the entire background. This is where you're going to gasp. I brought my panel, after all that coloring, back into my Misty. I'm using VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink, and I did that because it's a fast drying pigment ink, so it will sit on top of this cardstock, and it'll be more visible than what a dye ink would be on this type of cardstock. And here we go. It still does not look like a fantastic card. It takes a minute to get there. So now I'm using my clear embossing powder and I am embossing that. And what that does is it brings out that black line and all the detail that kind of got lost in the no line coloring, because I am not an expert at that at all, comes back and it becomes vibrant. And this is where I think the card takes a turn. I love the way that when you hold the panel in the light, it shimmers and shines all the different colors. Now for the stamen, the circular parts of the stamen did not stamp well and did not maintain during the coloring. So I opted to come in with some gold colored stickles, and I left them pretty dimensional, and I put a few in there to give different heights so you would have the illusion of what the stamen looked like on the camera. I then took some gold acrylic paint and I splattered it, and then I came in with some alcohol and I spritzed that on it to give more texture. Here are some final looks at my card. I really do appreciate you sticking it out with me, and until next time, keep crafting, my friends. Be blessed. Bye-bye.